Hi guys, and welcome to this lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to learn about graphing systems of inequalities. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Now, a system of equations is when you graph two graphs, or two lines, and your solution set is the overlap. So if I were to have two lines, there we go. If I were to have two lines right here, a blue one going this way, and a green one coming this way. Okay, the answer to this system of equations would be this point right here, the overlap. But when we do system of inequalities, there's shading involved. So it's not just one singular point or even infinitely many points when your graphs overlap. So, a system of inequalities, the answer is the set of all ordered pairs that satisfies the system. Okay, so if you pick a point and you plug it into both equations, and that's the key, both equations, it has to work in both equations, then it works. AKA, this is known as the overlap of your shading. So if you look down in this picture, all of this green space in the middle, this is our overlap right here. It's the overlap between the blue and the green shading. Okay, which means that the bottom line is shading up in the color blue, and the bottom line, or the top line, is shading down in the color yellow. Now in this picture, this point over here is not included in the answer set or in the solution set because it's not in the green area. Yes, it's in the blue area, but it doesn't satisfy both inequalities, and that's important. It has to satisfy both inequalities. If it's not in that overlap shaded area, it's not going to be a part of the solution set. So let's go ahead and practice. All right, so for our first one, you're going to graph the inequalities same as we've always done. So in this one, I'm going to do red on top and blue on bottom, because why not? All right, so this one I was going to start at 1, and I'm going to go down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1, because my slope is -2. Now in this graph, this is a greater than symbol, which means I have a dotted line. And there we go. Now with systems of inequalities, it's good to have a line that goes all the way across your graph. That way it's very clear where the shading is. And in this case, since y is greater than my equation, I'm going to shade above. By the way, if you have colored pencils or crayons, now is the time to bring them out. All right, there we go. There's my shading. My solution set for my green or my red graph is right there. Now for the blue graph. Okay, I'm going to graph at +3, and this has a slope of 1. So up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And this is a less than or equal to symbol, so we have a solid line. Okay, try again. Much better. And because it's less than, that means I'm going to shade underneath. Okay. This area right here where I'm double shading is our solution set. Notice how I don't care about the part that's only shaded red. I also don't care about this space over here that technically is a part of the solution set for the blue graph. Okay, because it doesn't overlap both graphs, and that is our key. All right, I'm going to erase now, and let's do this next one. So some of the graphs will look a little weird, and that's okay. Let's erase. Now, in these graphs, you can see x. X is less than 0, and x is less than negative 5. Now graphing these is going to be the exact same pattern, and since we only have the variable of x, that means we are going to graph as a vertical line. Okay, so I'm going to use yellow and green this time, because why not? And here we go. My first inequality is that x is less than 0. Okay, so where on my graph is x 0? And that's going to be right here. Oops, wrong color. Okay, right here on 0. So whenever you have an inequality or an equation where x equals 0, that's going to be the entirety of the y-axis. It's the only place on the entire graph where x is always 0. So that means I'm going to have a dotted line, because it's a less than symbol, going right down the y-axis. And because x is less than, that means I'm going to have shading all the way over here, because all of this is less than 0. Now let's move on to the next one. So in this case, I have x is less than negative 5. So negative 5 is right here. So I'm going to have a vertical line right there at negative 5. It's dotted because it's still less than. And because x is less than, that means all of my shading is going to be over here. And so this double shaded area is once again our solution set. Now, if you're not using colors, you can figure out different ways to make your solution set obvious. But whatever you do, please make sure it is very clear what is the overlap for your system. You go ahead and try. So here are two equations, our two inequalities, so to speak. Go ahead, graph the first system. The video is going to pause. When it plays again, you'll see the right answer. Good luck. And here's your answer. How'd you do? So if you're still struggling on figuring out where to shade, just remember that if it's greater, like in our yellow equation or in our yellow inequality, y is greater. If you're greater, you're going to be above. So you shade above the line. If you are less than, like in our inequality over here, if you're less than, you are below. So you're going to be below the line. And that just takes practice, or you can say it over and over and over again until it makes sense. All right, you guys do the next one. When the video is going to pause. When it plays again, you'll see the right answer. Go for it. Here's your answer. How'd you do? Did you remember that h of x, as this is called, and k of x, as this is called, are simply another way to write the y? So this is what you had. These are the proper names of our graphs. So instead of referring to the graphs like their color, because a lot of times on your worksheets or a lot of times on the textbook, they're not going to have the graphs in two different colors. You could simply say this is h of x and this is k of x over here. And even if you didn't have different colors, I'm going to write it over here because it's a little cramped over there. And even if you didn't have different colors, you could immediately look and know, okay, the top graph, h of x, is up here, and then this bottom one is k of x because that's how it's labeled. So as a reminder, h of x, f of x, g of x, those are simply proper names for your equations to help make, especially in systems of equations, it a little easier to identify which one is which. Now, not every system of equations is going to have a solution set. Remember, if there is no overlap, then there is no solution. Now, with regular systems of equations, no solution graphs happened when there was parallel lines. Okay, but as you've seen demonstrated at least twice, we've had parallel lines, but the shading still overlaps with systems of inequalities. So in order to get no solution on a system of inequalities, you have to have both. Okay, you have to have both parallel lines and no overlap on the shading. And you can see that demonstrated down here. I'll call this graph f of x, and I'll call this graph h of x. Now let's come over to our equations and match these up. So this one on the bottom is going to be f of x, because that's the one that has the regular less than symbol, and the one on the top is going to be h of x. So I'm going to solve both of these so that they are in slope-intercept form. Okay, so this one means negative y is less than or greater than or equal to a negative 3x plus 2. Multiply the whole thing by a negative 1, and you get y is less than or equal to, because remember, when you multiply by a negative 1, you flip the sign, 3x minus 2. And then down here, same thing, negative y is less than negative 3x minus 5, because I subtracted the negative 3 or the 3x over. Multiply the whole thing by negative 1, and you get y is greater than 3x plus 5. So you can see from the get-go that these are going to be parallel lines because of their slopes. The shading is what makes things interesting. Notice how with f of x, because we have a greater than symbol, we are going to shade above, because when we are greater, we are above, so we shade above the graph, and that's what gets us going all the way over here. And with h of x, it's the opposite. That is a less than or equal to symbol, so we are going to shade below. There is absolutely no overlap in these two graphs, and so that means there is no solution. Let's practice. You guys try 2a first. The video is going to pause. When it plays again, we'll see if the answers match up. How'd you do? Remember, whenever you have an equation or an inequality with only one variable, in this case y, we have a horizontal line. Okay, so don't forget that y graphs as a horizontal line, x graphs as a vertical line. All right, go for the next one with f of x and g of x. And here you go. Now, because this graph already had proper names, I just left them in one color and used the proper names of f of x and g of x to label them. But again, you see you have parallel lines, and the shading does not overlap at all. One goes on top, the other goes on the bottom. All right, this is the end of the lesson. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you next time.